You're terminated effective immediately. Security will walk you out. That was the first sentence the new CEO ever said to me. No handshake, no greeting, just execution. He didn't even sit down. He read the line like it was rehearsed, like someone had slid it across his desk and told him it would make him look powerful. His name was Peter Clark. Freshly imported, shiny resume, strategic growth mindset, or whatever corporate buzzwords he stapled to his ego. His suit looked expensive, but his confidence looked borrowed. Maybe from the board, maybe from his reflection. Either way, it didn't belong to him. I didn't argue. I didn't blink. I just smiled. I unpinned my badge, the one I'd worn for 17 years, placed it gently on the table and said calmly, "Great, then you should probably start preparing for the board meeting in 2 hours." His forehead creased, the first sign of hesitation. "Board meeting?" "Yes," I replied. "You'll want to be ready." And then I turned and walked out. Not rushed, not escorted, not humiliated. Just quiet, steady steps past glass walls and employees who suddenly pretended they weren't staring. Only one person looked directly at me. Our receptionist, Maria. Her eyes were wide, confused, almost pleading. I gave her a small nod. She'd find out soon enough. Security trailed a few steps behind me, not close enough to touch me. Just close enough to pretend protocol was happening. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. The security guard lingered in the hall, shifting awkwardly. "You're not actually fired, right?" he finally asked. I smiled. Not for long. The doors closed. Now, if you're hearing this and thinking this situation already feels like a corporate train wreck staged by someone drunk on power and YouTube motivational speeches, you're right. But you should know something. I wasn't just an employee. I was the reason this company existed past year 3. I was the skeleton under the drywall, the line in the shareholder agreement most people skimmed past, the name behind every operational system, every compliance certification, every crisis avoided quietly behind closed doors. And more importantly, I was the owner of 68% of voting shares. Not public shares, not decorative shares, voting, 2/3, enough to silence a room with a signature. Peter didn't know that. He saw my title, Chief Operations Officer, and assumed I was disposable. Just another relic of the old regime, another woman who should step aside so he could flex and impress investors. He had no idea I negotiated my equity quietly, one crisis at a time. Back when the company still operated out of a warehouse with flickering lights and a coffee machine older than gravity. Back when payroll was late. When lawsuits hovered. When the founder couldn't decide whether to scale or sell. I stayed. I built. I protected. And in return, not plaques, not conference room names, shares. The kind that couldn't be taken. Not even by a CEO with sharp hair and sharper arrogance. As the elevator descended, I replayed the morning. He didn't fire me because of strategy, or budget cuts, or restructuring. He fired me because someone told him he should. Someone who underestimated me. Someone who thought loyalty equaled silence. Someone who forgot I never negotiated from emotion. I negotiated from leverage. He believed walking me out would make him look like a decisive leader. But firing a corporate officer without board approval? That wasn't decisive. It was illegal. And triggering termination without proper authorization? That activated a rarely used clause buried deep in the governance bylaws. One I helped write. Emergency shareholder review. Mandatory board vote. Suspension of CEO authority until the vote occurred. And it happened automatically the moment he initiated my termination. Meaning right now, at that exact second, Peter Clark had no legal power. He just didn't know it yet. The elevator reached the lobby. I stepped out, calm as a snowfall. The receptionist glanced again. This time, I let the smile linger. Not smug, not cruel. Just knowing. Because in 2 hours, give or take, he would learn the same lesson many learned too late. Power isn't loud. It isn't titled. It isn't fresh suits or new office plaques. Power is written in ink. Power is earned in silence. Power is held by the one person no one expects to need permission from. And Peter? He had just tried to fire the one person he should have feared. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the cold morning air. 2 hours. That was all it would take. For everything to change. For him to learn. For reality to realign. And for me, not to return, but to reclaim. I didn't go home. People always assume that when you're fired, you go cry in your car or call a lawyer or rage text your closest friend with shaky thumbs. I didn't do any of that. I walked across the street to the same cafe I'd been going to for years, where the barista didn't ask for my order because she already knew it. "Rough morning?" she asked, sliding my coffee across the counter. I gave a small laugh. "Not yet," I said, "but it will be." She blinked, not understanding, and I didn't explain. Not then. I took my drink and chose the corner table facing the building. The one with mirrored windows that always made the company look untouchable, towering, polished. But glass is still glass. It cracks under pressure. I checked the time. 1 hour and 47 minutes left. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a message. A notification from the automated corporate system. Shareholder emergency review triggered. Legal review in progress. Good. Everything was functioning exactly the way it should. I had drafted that system myself in 2019 when the founder nearly promoted his 22-year-old cousin to CFO after a family conversation. Nepotism looks harmless until it holds a signing pen. That was the year I inserted safeguards. Quietly, cleanly, without fanfare. I never expected to use them. But I wasn't naive enough to pretend a system that grows out of egos and ambition would stay clean forever. My second notification came 12 minutes later, this time from Legal Affairs. "Please confirm your availability for emergency board assembly." I typed back one sentence. "I'll be there." No need for anything more. The message wasn't a courtesy. It was compliance. The law required my presence, even if Peter didn't know it yet. While I waited, I opened my laptop. Not to snoop, not to spy, just to watch. Corporate systems are like heart monitors. You don't need to interact. You just need to observe changes, and right on schedule. Access logs shifted. 3 board members logged in, then 2 more. Then one of our biggest investors from London, awake past midnight, signed into the governance portal. Someone, somewhere had told them something wasn't right. I didn't need to guess who. The CFO, Daniel Hayes, smart, calculated, practical to a fault. A man who operated as if disaster were always 5 minutes away. He didn't like me, but he respected me. And he respected bylaws even more. He definitely would have seen the termination alert hit the system, and he definitely would have panicked. Good. He should. Because unlike Peter, Daniel understood exactly what Peter had just detonated. At 10:17 a.m., my phone rang. "Daniel." I took a slow sip before answering. "Linda," he said. No greeting, no pleasantries. "Tell me this is some technical error." "It isn't," I replied. I could hear him exhale sharply. A chair scraped on his end of the call like he stood too fast. "He really fired you?" "Yes." "And you didn't stop him?" "I didn't need to." Silence. Then, "The board is furious." I expected they would be. Peter's calling emergency meetings with department heads. He thinks he's stabilizing optics. I huffed a short, humorless laugh. He's stabilizing nothing. He's performing. Daniel sighed again, this time quieter. "So what happens now?" "Now," I said. "We wait." 11:02 a.m., 1 hour left. Inside the glass building, movement shifted. People rushed, doors opened and closed. Phones were glued to ears. This wasn't normal workflow. This was panic wearing a professional suit. And somewhere, probably on the top floor in the office he didn't earn, Peter was finally learning he could not simply remove officers by proclamation. Power requires structure. Authority requires legitimacy. And leadership requires understanding, not assumption. He had none of those. At 11:26 a.m., another notification appeared. Request from CEO, meeting invitation. 2 hours ago, he was dismissing me like an inconvenient intern. Now he wanted a meeting. I declined. 5 seconds later, another message. Urgent. Declined. Another. Please. I didn't answer that one at all. Sometimes silence is the most powerful statement you can deliver. By 11:40, I finished my coffee and stood. Time to go back. Not as an employee walking into a job, but as the majority shareholder returning to a company that had forgotten who built its foundation. As I crossed the street, doors opened before I reached them. Security didn't block me. They nodded. Respectfully. One even stepped aside like I was royalty, not someone who'd been fired 90 minutes earlier. Inside, whispers followed me. Not mockery, not pity. Recognition. People sense when the balance of power shifts. They may not know the details, but instinct warns them. Someone just lit a fuse. I pressed the elevator button and waited. The digital clock above the door blinked. 11:58 a.m. 2 minutes until the board assembled. 2 minutes until Peter's illusion collapsed. 2 minutes until everything he assumed he could control rewrote itself in front of him. And as the elevator doors opened, I felt nothing dramatic. No triumph, no adrenaline, just clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. And some lessons are only learned when consequences arrive wearing heels and a calm smile. When the elevator opened onto the executive floor, the atmosphere felt different. Thick, quiet, tense. Like the air itself knew something had shifted and everyone was afraid to acknowledge it. The hallway leading to the boardroom was lined with glass offices. Normally, people inside would pretend to be busy, typing faster, shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. Not today. Today, eyes followed me openly. Some curious, some nervous, some relieved. I didn't rush. Power never hurries. At the end of the hall, 2 assistants stood guard outside the boardroom doors. Both stiff, both pale, both pretending they knew how to stand like professionals instead of terrified interns witnessing something well above their pay grade. One of them, Paige, took a small step forward. "Ms. Carter," she said softly, "they're waiting for you." Her voice carried the reverence people use in churches. I nodded once and she pushed open the door. The boardroom was full, every chair taken, every screen lit, every set of eyes alert. The founder's portrait on the far wall, the dramatic, oil-painted kind executives loved, looked almost embarrassed. At the head of the table sat the board chair, Gregory Hale. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of man who didn't waste words or time. He'd been in the room when the company was an idea scribbled on the back of a napkin. He didn't stand when I walked in, but he didn't need to. His attention was acknowledgement enough. 3 seats from him, I saw Peter. He looked different now, less polished, less sure. His tie was crooked, his jaw was tight, and his hands were clasped under the table as if he needed something to hold on to. He looked like someone who finally realized the room he entered was not the room he thought he owned. I took my place. Not at the head of the table, not at the seat designated for executives, but at the position reserved for majority shareholders. One quiet movement, and the entire dynamic shifted. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the board chair cleared his throat. "Let the record show," he began, "that this is an emergency session initiated under Article 9 of the Governance Charter, following the attempted termination of a sitting corporate officer without proper authorization." A murmur moved across the table. No theatrics, just consequences. The lawyer, our general counsel, Nancy, adjusted her glasses and read from a printed document. Earlier today, CEO Peter Clark issued a termination of employment for Chief Operating Officer Linda Carter. The action was executed without a board vote, without due process, and without review of contractual protections. Her tone was steady, clinical, almost surgical. She continued, "As per Section 14B of the Shareholder Agreement and Clause 11.2, subsection D, this triggers an immediate suspension of the CEO's executive authority pending review." Peter finally broke his silence. This is insane, he said. I was hired to restructure. I was told explicitly that I had authority to make staffing decisions. He looked around the table as if expecting support. None came. Nancy folded her hands calmly. You had authority to recommend staffing decisions, she corrected, not execute terminations of protected officers. I didn't know she was protected, he snapped. I finally looked at him. That, I said quietly, was your first mistake. His jaw tightened. And what? Owning shares suddenly makes you untouchable? Someone across the table exhaled sharply, as though watching someone step willingly into a fire. Gregory leaned forward. She doesn't own shares, he said. She owns the company. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. Peter blinked twice, confusion carving itself across his face. What? He whispered. Gregory gestured to the open binder in front of him. Linda holds 68% of voting shares, acquired legally, incrementally, and with full ratified oversight. Nancy added, gently but firmly, you attempted to fire the majority owner of the corporation you lead. That line hung in the room like a verdict. Peter sank back in his chair. His voice came out smaller. I didn't know. I kept my tone calm, not angry, not triumphant. That, I said, is your second mistake. Gregory shifted papers and looked around the table. We will now move to formal review. Before we proceed, Ms. Carter, would you like to make a statement? I didn't stand. Statements don't need volume, they need clarity. Yes, I said. Only this. Authority isn't given. It's earned. Titles are temporary. Leadership is responsibility, not performance. No one interrupted. I didn't build this company to feed egos or serve power games. I built it to survive, to thrive, to matter. I paused, letting the words settle. And anyone who leads it must understand something simple. You cannot fire people you do not understand. Gregory nodded once. The board will now deliberate. He struck the gavel gently, not aggressively, with precision. Peter, you may step outside. Peter stood slowly, almost mechanically, then walked to the door without meeting anyone's eyes. As it closed behind him, no one spoke, not even a whisper. Because everyone understood. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a reckoning. The moment the door closed behind Peter, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. The room exhaled, chairs relaxed, shoulders lowered. People finally let reality replace shock. Gregory adjusted his glasses, folding his hands neatly on the table. We'll proceed, he said. Nancy, still composed with the precision of a surgeon, opened a second file. Thicker, more detailed. We're here to determine whether Mr. Clark's continuation as CEO aligns with shareholder interest, fiduciary responsibility, and legal compliance. It sounded formal, procedural, but everyone knew what it really meant. Does he stay, or does he go? Board deliberations aren't emotional. At least they shouldn't be. But humans, no matter how polished, carry egos, grudges, loyalties. So the conversation had texture. One member, Jacob, VP of Global Partnerships, leaned forward first. I'll say it plainly, he began. I don't trust him to lead. A CEO who doesn't read the governance structure is reckless. Across from him, Serena, a longtime investor, shook her head. He's inexperienced, yes, but I'm not sure termination is necessary. CEOs make abrupt changes all the time during restructuring. A few nodded, others stiffened. I spoke only when Gregory looked at me, not as the injured party, but as the stakeholder. Restructuring isn't the issue, I said calmly. Due process is. Nancy nodded, reinforcing, a CEO ignoring corporate bylaws isn't restructuring, it's negligence. The conversation continued, measured, analytical, and slow. Some argued he deserved a warning. Others reminded the board this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a legally binding violation. Still, the room wasn't unanimous. It rarely was. People hate making decisions with irreversible endings. Gregory finally raised a hand. "We're circling," he said. "Let's anchor this." He looked to me, not deferentially, but respectfully. "Linda, before we vote, one final question." I met his eyes. "If the board reinstates him, can you work with him?" Silence again. Not tense this time, but waiting. I chose honesty. Not the strategic kind, not the softened kind. "I could," I said, "professionally, but the question isn't whether I can tolerate him." I let the truth settle before finishing. It's whether the company can survive his leadership. No dramatic flourish, no pointed glare, just truth. Gregory nodded once. The vote began. One by one, board members stated their position. Calm voices, controlled tones. Some voted for immediate removal. Some pushed for probation and oversight. Some hesitated until the very last second. When the count reached 8 votes to remove and 3 to retain, the decision became irreversible. Gregory closed the binder. The motion passes. Just like that, Peter Clark was no longer CEO. No shouting, no courtroom theatrics, just governance. The door opened again, not dramatically, not angrily, and Peter stepped in. His expression told me everything. Someone outside had already warned him. Still, protocol required formality. Gregory spoke clearly. "Mr. Clark, the board has concluded the review. Effective immediately, your role as CEO is terminated." Peter swallowed, but he didn't argue. "That's it?" he asked quietly. "No second chance?" Gregory's reply was steady. "This wasn't a mistake," he said. "It was a misunderstanding of the organization you were leading." Peter turned to me then, not angry, not defensive, just humbled. "You could have stopped me," he said. "I could have," I agreed. "But you didn't ask." His jaw tightened. "So what now? You step in as CEO?" "No," I replied. "I don't need the title." He frowned, confused. "So then why?" "Because leadership isn't about firing people," I said. "It's about understanding what you're responsible for." His shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but realization. He nodded once, almost a bow, then left the room without another word. The board sat in silence. Not triumphant, not relieved, just still. Finally, Gregory turned to me. "Do you want to appoint an interim?" "Yes." "Do you have someone in mind?" I did. Not someone loud, not someone flashy. Someone who knew the value of listening before leading. "Daniel Hayes," I said. There was a beat of surprise, then slow nods, then agreement. With that, the meeting concluded. Documents were signed, roles updated, systems reset, order restored. As I gathered my folder, Serena, the one who had defended Peter earlier, spoke gently. "Linda, why didn't you stop him that first minute?" I paused, because this was the part no bylaw captured. "He needed to see the consequences," I said. "Not for me, for whoever comes next." She nodded, slow, thoughtful. "That," she whispered, "is leadership." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The boardroom emptied slowly, one person at a time, each carrying the weight of the morning with them. No one rushed, no one joked. No one even checked their phones. Moments like this don't happen often in business. Moments where everyone is reminded that titles are temporary and structure isn't decoration. It's protection. When the last board member left, I remained seated. Not because I needed to be there, but because I needed a moment to transition. From conflict to clarity. The leather chair beneath me felt familiar. The air felt still. And for the first time that day, I allowed myself to breathe. Not relief. Not triumph. Just oxygen. Something I hadn't realized I'd been withholding. Eventually, I stood and walked out into the hallway. It felt quieter than before. Less frantic, more aware. People didn't avoid eye contact. They didn't rush past pretending not to notice. Instead, they watched me with a different kind of gaze. Not fear, not awe. Respect. One employee, someone from analytics, I think her name was Sarah, stepped toward me. "Miss Carter?" she asked, voice unsure. "Yes." She hesitated, then said, "I'm glad you're still here." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant as praise. It was simply honest. And it meant more than any applause ever could. Before heading to the lower floors, I stopped by the office that had once been mine. The door was locked, code disabled, nameplate already removed. Peter had acted quickly. Too quickly. I placed my hand on the handle, not trying to open it, just acknowledging it. That piece of glass and wood had never defined me. The work did. The systems did. The trust did. And none of that could be erased with a keycard. I turned away from the door and walked toward the stairwell instead of the elevator. I needed the walk. On the second floor, I passed the IT office. The director, Tom, saw me through the open doorway and stepped out. "All systems reactivated," he said. "Your access never fully dropped. We paused everything the second the alert triggered." I nodded. "Thank you." He shrugged, almost embarrassed. "You built half of it. I figured the system would rebel if we removed you." A small smile pulled at my mouth. "Probably," I said. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with quiet conversations. Nothing loud or chaotic. Just curiosity trying to piece together what they sensed but didn't yet understand. Behind the reception desk, Maria straightened when she saw me. She swallowed hard, as if she wasn't sure whether to speak. I stepped closer. "You look like you have a question," I said gently. She let out a nervous laugh. "I do. Just one." I lifted an eyebrow. "Are you staying?" The question wasn't professional. It was personal. People need to know if the ground under them is solid. "Yes," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." Her shoulders dropped, not from relief, but from certainty. There's a difference. Instead of heading to my car, I stopped at the large windows facing the street, where I'd stood before being escorted out earlier. Cars passed. People walked. Life continued. The company wasn't the world, but it was the world for many who worked there. People with mortgages, kids, aging parents, ambitions, fears. It mattered. And that was why I stayed. Not because I needed control or revenge, but because walking away would have left the company vulnerable to someone who treated leadership like a performance. People deserve better than that. My phone buzzed. A message. From Daniel. "Conference room B. 5 minutes?" Simple. Efficient. Predictable. I responded. "On my way." The conference room was smaller, more private. When I entered, Daniel was already there. Suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, paperwork spread out. "Transition plan," he said, tapping the stack. "Good," I replied, taking a seat across from him. He studied me for a moment. "You knew this could happen one day," he said, not accusing, just observing. "I prepared for the possibility," I answered. "Why didn't you take the CEO role years ago?" he asked. I looked at him, not evasive, not dismissive. "Because I never wanted a throne," I said. "I wanted a foundation." He nodded slowly, processing that. After a moment, he asked quietly, "So what happens now?" I took a breath. Not rushed, not heavy. "Now," I said, "we rebuild, not because something failed today, but because today showed us where the cracks were." He leaned back, expression thoughtful. "And Peter?" "He'll move on," I replied. "And maybe, if he learns something, he'll be better for it." As I stood to leave, Daniel said, "Linda?" I paused. "For what it's worth, the company is better with you in it." I didn't respond immediately, not because I didn't know what to say, but because the moment deserved stillness. Finally, I answered, "The company is better because of everyone who cares. Not just me." Then I walked toward the door. Outside, sunlight reflected on the building's glass facade. It looked the same as it had that morning. But everything inside had changed, not because someone was removed, but because the structure held. Because truth mattered. Because transparency mattered. Because leadership wasn't about firing first. It was about understanding what and who you are responsible for. And some lessons, they're worth the fight.